All right, welcome to Dynamo for Civil 3D. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I'm excited to talk to you about the new addition to Civil 3D programming, Dynamo. It arrived for us with Civil 3D 2020 and is available to us in Civil 3D 2021. So, just to get started, so what is Dynamo? It's a new add-in or extension that you can have with Civil 3D. It installs automatically with Civil 3D 2021. It's an added download for 2020. It's basically a way of programming. It has all the logic and functionality of a programming language, but it's a lot easier to use for us civil engineers and designers because it's graphical programming. So we just simply organize code that is already written for us. So we don't really need to learn a programming language, but we need to think with the logic of a programmer to organize code snippets, or in Dynamo language, nodes. The programming language is design script. So if you are familiar with programming, you can write design script, but for most of us, we will be using the nodes to organize the code. What you can do with Dynamo is you can create geometry, position geometry, visualize geometry. You can also do all of these things with data. More data is in our Civil 3D drawings now, and we can harness the data, tabulate the data, report the data, export the data, or even create data in our drawings very easily, more efficiently, because programming lets us iterate really fast. Once the program is created or a workflow is authored, we can run the workflow in as many projects as we can or we want. So makes it very, very efficient to use Dynamo for those custom workflows that only pertains to your work. So how do we use Dynamo? So a quick overview of the interface. Once we execute Dynamo, we're gonna take a look at how the interface is divided. There is the library towards the left side. The library contains your set of commands or nodes. Otherwise, they're code snippets, code that was already written, and we can use it to organize our workflow. So the nodes are in the library. There is actually nested libraries. So there is library of like an AutoCAD library. Inside there, you'll see another library inside of it. So they're organized very well to find easier. On the right side, there is the area for then how you organize the workflow. And it has two faces because there is a 3D view and a graph view. The 3D view shows you actually what you're creating, kind of like your AutoCAD model space. And the graph view is your Dynamo script or workflow. In Dynamo, we call it a graph. And we organize the graph with nodes. We connect the nodes with wires. The wires give the flow of the data, so transferring the data from one operation to another. And finally, we can execute the workflow. Down at the bottom left corner. There is a run command to run the workflow to create the data for us. If we dig a little bit deeper, one of the libraries is the geometry library. And inside the geometry library, we got the points category. Points category, you have the list of nodes that are available for working with points. It always starts with a point. And with Dynamo, you get a list of nodes that do specific things, and they're usually grouped in, or can be grouped in, one of the three categories. They're either something that you're going to be able to create with, or you may be able to modify or apply an action to. Or if you already have a point and you're interested in gathering information regarding that point. So it's create, action, and query. They're usually categorized that way, most of them. And that helps us with discovery. So if I'm interested in creating points, I'm only going to focus on that little plus sign green nodes that let me create something. Now there is a lot of libraries in Dynamo, and to make it simpler, if you right click anywhere, you usually are able to search for your nodes, and you'll find yourself searching a whole lot because there is a lot of nodes, and it's just faster to get to that node. If you know the name, it's faster to get to the node. And also if you don't know where something would be located, it's also faster to get to the node that way. Like for example, an angle. Maybe I just want to measure an angle and I don't know where an angle node might be. So I would just search for an angle. So let's dig deeper in the specific point node. So if I was creating a point, I would click the point node, and that gives me a node highlighted in yellow right there. And it requires me to give it some inputs, and it gives me something output. So on the left side is the inputs for the operation, and the right side is the output. Normally, when we draw a point in AutoCAD, the command line kind of guides us to specify a point location, and when we specify that, we get the output of a point. So in Dynamo, same idea. We just need to give it the numerical numbers for X, Y, and Z, and it generates a point for us, a Dynamo point in the Dynamo interface. And the point can be examined in two different ways. We can see it in the Watch 3D node here that just lets us see the point graphically. But more importantly, we're more concerned about the data. So under the normal watch command, we can examine the point itself, object, and its parameters of X, Y, and Z. Now there is a lot of different types of inputs that we can have. So for a point, it requires numbers. But sometimes we want to type in text, so that would be a string or an integer. A point itself is a geometry object, and then in some cases we also have a boolean. A boolean is a true and false switch, and in some cases we want to examine something and identify, is it true or is it false. So we can use Dynamo to test and apply logic to test and verify things versus whether it's true or false, and that would be a way of us reviewing data. Not only do we have the out-of-the-box nodes, we also have additional libraries that a lot of developers have created. There is an active user community for Dynamo. It's been active for quite some time with the Revit community, and Civil 3D is no different now. There is a number of developers who develop additional functionality for Dynamo for use with AutoCAD and Civil 3D specifically. And they are usually available for you in the form of a package. The package is just a little packaged up set of commands or set of nodes, nicely organized in a package, and then you can install the package in Dynamo, and that will give you the ability to use additional functionality that's not available right out of the box for Dynamo. So I highly encourage looking at packages to extend the functionality of Dynamo. Specifically, a very common one for Civil 3D users, Civil 3D Toolkit. It's a very powerful package. It's loaded with features, and it extends the functionality for Civil 3D quite a bit. So I have that Civil 3D Toolkit installed, and I'm going to show you some of the tools in there. All right, so let's take a quick peek at the interface itself. So to start Dynamo, once it's installed, I'm using AutoCAD Autodesk Civil 3D 2021, and when it installs under the Manage tab. towards the end here, the visual programming, you have the Dynamo interface, full-blown Dynamo to write your own custom workflows. And then you also have Dynamo Player. Dynamo Player is a way to run the workflows. So if someone in the office does not know how to use Dynamo, but needs to take advantage of running a workflow that's already created by a colleague, you can run the workflow using the Dynamo Player. Makes it very easily and attainable to a lot of people to use Dynamo without actually knowing how to use Dynamo. So very, very powerful. I'm gonna run the Dynamo Player first to give you an example of what we're gonna do, and then I'll venture in Dynamo itself and talk about the interface. So in this drawing here, I have a plain drawing. There's nothing actually in it here. I'm zoomed into the White Mountains area in New Hampshire. The drawing does have the coordinate system set. It's New Hampshire 83, net 83 foot. And I took some pictures over there. I have some pictures on my C drive. So under my photos library here, I have 2 pictures that I took from that location. So think about like going for a site visit, and we took about a lot of pictures, and we'd like to see the picture locations in our drawing. Common thing, those pictures I took with my phone, so they contain the metadata for the location and angle of the capture. And I'd like to see the location of these pictures in my drawing right here. So I can do that with Dynamo Player. One of the workflows you can create is something like creating blocks, AutoCAD blocks at specific locations. So I created the graph and started the Dynamo Player, and I can just simply run the graph without actually me knowing how to use Dynamo. So I'll start the graph here. So the graph has a couple of inputs that I need to give it. So I need to tell it where the files are, where my pictures are. So I'll browse to my picture location. There's my picture folder. And then I'll give it the block name, the AutoCAD block that I'd like to put in here. And it's called, I called it pick marker. That's just the name of a block. And also the layer of the block. So I want to put that thing on the layer. So I'm going to say pick location. That's just a layer name, right? And I play that, right? Comes back and tells me I'm done. And it's an annotated block. So if I change my annotation, it should show up. Right here, it's a normal AutoCAD block, nothing fancy about that one. It's a block reference. I put it on that pick layer and the block is rotated according to the picture orientation. And I also hyperlinked it. So, I can hover over and it says click here to see the image. So if I click here, I get my image. So here is my image. That was a sunrise. It's rotated, but that's fine. So that's the idea here. We can automate some workflows really quickly that way. So let's take a peek at how I created the workflow to place an AutoCAD block, rotate it, and hyperlink it. So to do that, we'll take a look at Dynamo. So I'll start the Dynamo application. This is the home page for it. There is usually a lot of samples that you can take a look at to learn how to use Dynamo. So there is samples at the bottom here for different functionalities. There is also the Dynamo primer and tutorials to take a look at how again, tutorials. Primer is a great resource to learn how to use Dynamo. There is also the Dynamo dictionary. It explains each node, what each node does. So if you're not clear from the name, tells you what it is. But in any case, we'll create something new here. So I'll do new, and that's the new interface. Now, actually, I created a template for myself, so I'll start from my template, and that just gives me color coding. I like to color code my graph so I know what's going on. So this just lets me know that that's my color coding scheme. On the left side, you have the top part here is the libraries, and the bottom part is my extensions or packages. So I have a lot, as you can see. To install a package, you go up to the menu, packages, search for a package, and this is searching online. You have to have an internet connection, but you don't have to have an internet connection to use it, just to download it. But here is the Civil 3D Toolkit, one of the really useful ones. I highly recommend installing. So you just search for it, and it's available to you. When you install it, it's going to be under the Autodesk folder, Civil 3D Toolkit, and it has a lot of tools here to deal with AutoCAD as well as Civil 3D objects. And that's in addition to the AutoCAD out-of-the-box library and Civil 3D out-of-the-box library to deal with these elements. So those are the libraries that specifically interact with AutoCAD environment. As you can tell, this environment is detached from Civil 3D, and we need a way to link back and forth from the Civil 3D drawing to the Dynamo environment and back. So this is an add-on application, and for it to talk to Civil 3D or AutoCAD, we absolutely have to have the AutoCAD library here so that we can make that link to the active drawing. But in addition to that, we have several native Dynamo operations. So we have AutoCAD lines, we have Civil 3D feature lines, we also have a Dynamo line. So it's a different object type. So under geometry here, under curves, we get to see here is the Dynamo line. Whereas under AutoCAD, under objects, we get to see an AutoCAD line. And then likewise, we have a Civil 3D feature line. So we have different object types, and it depends where they live. And we need to translate the object types from one format to the other. In any case, let's start with pointing Dynamo to the location of my pictures. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to input something, right? So I'm going to look at the import export, and I'm going to import file system because I'm finding a folder in my system. So over here we have a lot of things. What we're after here, I want to find a directory. So I'm going to do directory. So that's going to be the location of our pictures. That's pretty simple. So we'll point it to the location of the pictures. Now we know that. Now we made a connection to the location of the pictures. All right. So it just knows the connection. Now we need to know what's in there. So I have a path. All right. I need a directory from path. All right. So now I have a directory. Let's grab a directory from path. All right. So now I have a path. I need the directory from it. So I just click once to get a wire. Click again to connect the wire. Now I know what's in their path. And if I run that, I now see my path. There is a directory right now. So that's basically how we keep going. And then we need the things in this path. Right? So we need to find the items in this path. So get directory contents. Right? It's a very one step at a time kind of thing, but here is my directory. And this particular node here wants a directory. So you just connect them up. So you can do it from left to right and right to left, it doesn't matter. But basically the output of one goes to the input of the next, and you move left to right like that. So once we do that, I now have the information in there. So as you can see, I have two pictures. So two, image 0 and image 1. That's my files in the directory, and I don't have any subfolders, so my directories are empty. So I have a list of files. All right. So now to do stuff with this file, I need to actually figure out what is this. So it's a JPEG. So no longer am I in file system. I need to work with the photo file, and the photo itself has a lot of metadata. Now, out of the box in Dynamo, there is no thing that works with pictures. There is one image here that tells you basic information about image. You can get the dimension of the image or the pixels and things like that, but not a whole lot. But one of the extensions or packages does let us extend that ability. So the Civil 3D Toolkit, all right, if we expand that one, we have a library it's called Calibration, and we have a sub-library for photos here, the category photo, and it gives us a lot of tools to read things about this photo object that we have now. So we have a file of a photo, and I can do things with it. So the plus sign is creating a file. We don't want to create something. We already know we already have them. But I can get something about it. So there is angle and direction and location of the picture. And there is also GPS coordinates for that picture. And those are all the metadata from my phone when I took the picture. So I'm interested in the angle. And location. So I'll click angle and I get the angle. And location, I get my location. So those are it. All right. And there is one more that I need. Create a photo by file path. I have my path. Here is the path. All right. So since I have the path, I can take the path and put it in here. And now I get my pictures. So now it understands that this is a picture. Now I can take the photo and put it next to my angle here, and now I get a list of angles. And likewise, when I take my photo and give it a photo input, I now have the locations of the photo, but it needs to know my coordinate system. So there is two inputs for this one, coordinate system as well as the photo itself, the photo file. So if you hover over, it tells you what is the input type. Well, remember we have a couple of input types here: string, text, integer, boolean. If you're not sure what it is, so if you hover over it, it tells you exactly what it is expecting. So it's a string. So we know that this particular drawing is NH83F, so that's a string, so I can just type it in. To type it in, I need a text box. So what I would do is I would go to the original Dynamo libraries. One of the Dynamo libraries is a string, right? And I want to create something, so it's under generate, right? And then, oh no, sorry. So it's going to be under input, and it's a basic input. And one of the inputs here is a string. So if I just click on that, I get a string node, and I can type it in NH83F. So that's my coordinate system. Once I connect it up, place it, I now have 2 points. All right, so we can take a look at this in Dynamo, or we need to send it to AutoCAD down the line. Here we're going to send it to AutoCAD, but in Dynamo, if you flip to the graph view, we have graph view and 3D view. If you flip to the 3D view, we can take a look at the points in space, kind of like in model space. We now have 2 points created, and that resembles the location of my pictures. So now I have an angle list and a point list. Anyone has any questions so far? All right, so let's take a look at what we can do with this point list. So let's say I have a block in mind that I would like to insert. So no longer do I need to use the Civil 3D Toolkit. Some of the commands or nodes that are available out of the box is under the AutoCAD library. So under the AutoCAD library, you have the document. So the document is your way of making connection to the entire drawing file. So in the document, you have things in there for the block, the layers, the current layer, the actual drawing itself, the current drawing, model space and paper space, making that connection to the drawing, from Dynamo to the drawing. And almost always, you're going to use this one here that says get the current AutoCAD document. Now once I click that, it automatically makes that connection to the current AutoCAD drawing. So here it is, my drawing, the active drawing right now is right here. So I made the connection. Before this point, I had no connection to what's going on in the drawing. What is in this drawing? Well, I know I have this block here that's called this particular block is called pick marker, and I'd like to pick this up. So in order to pick it up, we're gonna find it. So there is an option here for block by name. So in the block by name, it needs two items from me. It needs the document. So it's just a simple list, making that connection. That block is living in the drawing that I have open. And then what is the name of the block? So it needs a string. So we can go drill down back into the input and find the string, or we can right click and type in string, and that list that shows up for me right away. Here is a string, click string, and now I can just give it the name. So that was the block name was called pick marker. So that's a already created block to pick marker. That's the name of my block, and I lace it up. Now I have a block that's listed in my list. You'll notice that everything in Dynamo is managed by lists of items, list of photos, list of points, list of angles. It's all about the list because it's repetitive. We can keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and Dynamo will just go through the list that you have. All right, so I'd like to insert the block at that point, and I would like to rotate the block with that angle up here. So now that I have my block, to insert something, we'll go down to objects, and we have the block reference. So I want to reference that block. So I'd say I want to create a block. So we have creation nodes, we have nodes that will let us understand things, and nodes that will give us information back. So we'll do create, and this is block reference dot create. That's the name of this particular node. It needs a couple of items from us. So first thing, it needs to know what is it gonna create. So the source block. So the source block is the block that we picked from the drawing. So list that up. Let me organize my space. Always helpful to have it organized. And then the position. Here is the position is a point. So if you hover over, it says point. So you can list that one to this one. All right, the normal is the vector. So yeah, that's fine. This is a 2D point, so it doesn't matter. So normal is fine. Rotational degrees, I want to rotate my block, so I just lace it up. And then I'm not going to scale my block or anything. So scale factor here is fine. Next up is the layer. So it wants to know what layer to go to. So if you hover over layer, that's just the name of the layer in the form of a string. So right click again and say string. All right, and we can get a string. But instead of that, there is a handy node that will let us write the design script language. So the programming language, and it's available to you when you just simply double click. Double click gives you this thing that's called code block. And if you look at the help online, you'll find that a lot of people use this code block thing because it's a simple double click and you get a code block. So code blocks are where you can write programming. You can write the programming language design script. You can write the whole script. In reality, in theory, you can write the whole graph in one code block, and that would be it. But we don't want to do that. The whole idea of Dynamo is to arrange nodes. But we can use this code block for simple things. If I want a number, you can just type in a number, and that would give me a number. If I want a piece of text, I put it in quotes, and that would be the text. So that's like a string, as long as you put it in quotes. If you type a letter without quotes, that makes it a variable. So be careful. And there is a lot more with what you can do with the codes, but code block, because we can write any of the nodes in design script. So block reference, here is my block reference. Now I wrote this entire node is it. That's it. That's right here, block reference. So and now it needs the parameters for it. So in any case, we'll put in the layer name here that says Dynamo demo, and in quotes, close quotes, and that's going to be the layer name. And I'm just going to delete these things so that we recreate them. All right, and final thing that may sound confusing is this idea of block again. So up top is the source block. This is the block that we want to draw, but the bottom part here is the block space that we're in. We're familiar with the fact that we have a model space and a paper space, and each layout is a different block. And when we enter into the block editor space, like if I edit the block marker that I have, that would be the space that I'm in, the name of the block. So the block here implies the name of the space. All right, so the name of the space that I'm in is model space. So in order to give that information to it, I'll go back to my AutoCAD library. Under document, we have the model space in paper space. All right, so you click model space, and the model space will give you the block output, which strings into the input for that. But it also needs the document. And it is good practice not to create another document node if you can help it. Reuse things that you've already had. So here is my current document that we gathered a while ago. I just string it in. Now I have everything that needs to be done to create the block in my drawing. So I just simply need to run it. Run that. And if we change our annotation scale again, now we see them. Right, so now I've created the block that we've started out with. Right, now we can take this block and do other things with it. Like I have a list of blocks now, 2 blocks. Now I can take it and create a hyperlink for this object and write the hyperlink back to AutoCAD. There's a lot we can do with it. One of the items that I want to show you for for graph management is just making it clear. So grouping things together. So all of the items at the beginning here, for example, I can take all of that and right click and say create a group. So that means that those things kind of go together. This is a very good way of documenting your workflow so that when you come back in a month and see what you've done. You can kind of see what's going on here and organize and be able to read the graph. So maybe get photo files. That way you're not like you're reading the bigger picture of the workflow. Grouping is just graph management, has no impact on the actual graph to run. So I don't need to have any kind of groups. It's just a good practice. You can also color code your grouping. So if you're just grabbing information, that would be your input or getting stuff. So right click on it, I can choose a color. So I can choose, getting information based on my template here. Color coding, getting is purplish. All right, and writing out is greenish. So my writing, the stuff that writes up my object, the output, the final product of the graph. Maybe I want that to be green, and that would be create block. So that's a good practice to document your workflow, so that other people in the team can also be able to read your thoughts. And one final note is the warnings. There is three primary colors. The gray here, that means that the dark gray is a node that has been executed. The yellow means there is a warning, and it tells you what the warning is. And the red means it's not gonna work. And this particular warning happens often, especially with civil workflows, because we deal with large coordinate points based on the coordinates of the White Mountains. The coordinate values, like on the status bar, is pretty huge. It's in the 100,000s, and Dynamo has a limited space. It has a limited space, where AutoCAD, you can apply a different coordinate system to it. Dynamo does not understand that. Dynamo is a Cartesian canvas for the graph view. It's a Cartesian canvas. So it's just letting you know that you're out of the range, and it may not be able to process the geometry that you're working with. It's always going to process the data, but sometimes does not able to process the geometry. So what you want to do is, it tells you to change the geometry working range. The geometry working range is under the settings. Change the geometry scaling, and that's purely for geometry, not the data. And the geometry range here can range from small to large, extra large. And as you can see at the bottom here, the settings, it'll tell you, here is the amount of decimal spaces that we can read, 4 decimal places. Where if you choose large, it drops down to 2 decimal places, but gives you a bigger numbers. And extra large, you get no decimal places. And it's a misconception that we need to match the geometry working scale. We actually don't need to match it. We can accept the warnings. It is just a warning. If you choose large or extra large, sometimes the math will not work out correctly because there is not enough precision. So I always recommend that your working range is medium. And that may inhibit you from looking at your geometry in the Dynamo workspace, but it will actually calculate the point locations accurately in AutoCAD and place them correctly. So we've learned to accept the warning that we are in a limited space in Dynamo. But that was a quick overview of the Dynamo interface, capturing information from the library, organizing them, lacing them up one by one, and grouping them for documentation purposes. Once the graph is created, you don't necessarily need to run it in Dynamo. You can always run it in Dynamo Player. Makes it easy and attainable to a lot of people, and more flexible too for sharing. So just to recap, make sure that you use packages. They extend the functionality of Dynamo quite a bit. Document your graphs, because it's going to get complicated really quickly. Keep it neat and color coded. It's the best way to see what's going on from one day to the other, and calibrate on the idea for the workflow. Develop a color coding scheme. Okay, and finally, Who should use Dynamo? Well, as you can see, if I'm inputting a picture location over and over and over, that's not a good use of my time. So that's when you would use Dynamo, when things seem repetitive, whether repetitive in placement, calculating, exporting. It's also when you are testing design variations. So there is this idea of generative design, and that's basically iterating the variations that you want to test out. And Dynamo is the stepping stone in that for the AEC industry to iterate different inputs and test different variations because it does it over and over and over. So that's when you would use Dynamo. That's where Dynamo can be of great help. So I'm open to any questions. Anything that I haven't really talked about. Any thoughts, questions that come up? I'm gonna monitor the questions pane for a few minutes. But thank you for joining me this afternoon. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out to the MicroCAD support team. I would be happy to help.